All right, we're recording. Commissioner Washington, you can take it away.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Ward 5 Redistricting Task Force Committee meeting. I am Commissioner Sandy Washington, one of the 4 co-chairs of the Redistricting Task Force. The other co-chairs are Rafi Crockett, Timmy Bennett, and Nolan Treadway. I want to thank the council member McDuffie for his leadership, dedication, and commitment in keeping the ward together, for organizing a great team of individuals to work on this redistricting process. Thank you, thank you, thank you, council member. We are excited to have you join us this evening, as well as our guest speakers that have joined us to provide information that will be helpful with redistricting process. Let me remind everyone that all meetings are subject to the Open Meeting Act and therefore must be noticed, open to the public, recorded, and it is anticipated that our meetings will be virtual, recorded either on Zoom, Facebook, or YouTube, unless otherwise noted. With that, we're going to move forward with our agenda. We have a lot to cover this evening. And what I'd like to start with is our introduction of our new members. At our last meeting, we had several committee members to attend and introduce themselves. If there are any new committee members that have joined us tonight, will you please introduce yourself? And may that I ask that you keep your introductions to a minimum. And Jonathan, I'm going to ask you to help assist with that.
Absolutely. I see, if we could just start with Tatiana Torres.
Hi, good evening. Tatiana Torres, Ward 5 resident in the Brookland area for about, I would think at this point, 9 and going on 10 years. Very happy to be able to be with you all. Have served in district government and in the private sector now in public relations. Pleasure to be with you all tonight.
Thanks, Tatiana. That is the only new person that I see on right now. And if I'm missing anybody, feel free to unmute yourself and jump in.
I think
this is Nicholas Rowland, he, him. I live in Eckington and
Hey, Nick. Thank you.
Okay. You see anyone else?
I do not.
Can I see
Free to
anyone else?
unmute yourself. No.
Okay. All right, well then we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. I would like to introduce Brian McClure. I guess I'm pronouncing you correctly, I hope so, from the Council on Racial Equity, who will provide information on the role it has on redistricting. After his presentation, we'll take some questions and answers. And Brian, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, good evening, commissioners, guests. Thanks again, especially to Councilmember McDuffie and his office for the invitation to come speak about this important work. If you give me 1 second, I will share my screen. And hopefully I get this right. I practiced before we started so that we will not have any technical difficulties. All right, what do you all see?
Your presentation.
Your presentation is up.
All right, so that's step 1. Step 2, let me hit play. Do you still see it?
Yes.
It's going great.
All right, that means we're gonna have a great night tonight. Thank you all. So again, my name is Brian McClure. Some of you may remember me from Councilmember McDuffie's office. I had the pleasure of working with him for a while and also working for the executive at the Department of Small and Local Business Development for a little while. But I'm happy to be here in this role, in this capacity as the director of the Council Office of Racial Equity. We launched this time last year. And although I'm the director of the office, you all are missing out tonight because Malika Robbins usually would have been speaking but had a prior engagement. And Ms. Robbins has handled the redistricting work for our office. We are a small team of 5, and this work would not be successful without the contributions of the team. And so one of the reasons why I'm happy to come speak with you all tonight is so that you all can put a name with or a face with the office. And whether it's redistricting or other issues that you all may have, we want to be a resource and work alongside you all. So what does CORE do? We are primarily tasked with writing racial equity impact assessments, which is a careful and systematic review and evaluation that evaluates bills that make their way through council and determines what their impact would be for Black, Indigenous, and other peoples of colors in ethnicity. We also make sure that council receives racial equity training, that members and staff have access to special reports. For example, we've done several reports on the COVID vaccine rollout. We provide, I guess for lack of a better word, counsel and advice to members and staff, as well as the public as requested. We also spend a lot of time developing a number of toolkits, which we'll talk about in a second. One of the approaches that we ground our work in is that we are focused on systems. And one of those systems that we want to encourage you all to think about is what are the structural and institutional challenges that lay before us. And so it is in the ways our public and private institutions interact to create and reinforce patterns of racial inequities. And so even a decision that may seem on the surface that it's not as serious, such as drawing a line or moving a boundary, there are significant, as you all know, implications there. And there are significant implications by race. And so that's one of the things that we want to emphasize tonight. And so quickly, one of the things that I learned is important is to set some context of things that we do not do. And so we try our best to only weigh in on specific issues as requested or as the council rules require. And so if there is a bill, a measure that comes before council that is eligible to receive what I'll call a RIA, a racial equity impact assessment, that is the time that we officially weigh in and produce our reports. All of our reports are published on a database on our website, and I'll be sure to share that link with you all before I leave. We do not, well, we try our best not to make policy recommendations. Our goal is to be informative and to provide timely and relevant information for council and the public to base their decisions off of. We also do not take a stance on whether or not a bill should pass or should not pass. And so some of the things that we encourage the public to use, and these things are on our website. I would be happy to work with either of you as you're doing this work or other work. We've developed toolkits where you can take the methodology in this racial equity lens and apply it to everything that you're doing, both in terms of process and in terms of actual policy decisions. And so this is a screenshot from one of our toolkits. And the toolkit was created to get people to think about the racial equity impacts or how Black and other communities of color are impacted. You know, when we talk about the who, the what, the how, what are the who, the what, and how related to racial equity? How did these racial inequities come into being? Who are disparately impacted by these inequities? How are the solutions that are being crafted addressed? You know, for example, when we talk about data, is this data disaggregated? And so we created very specific curated questions to help the public, to help members and staff think through these questions as they are approaching developing and creating policy decisions and programs. And so, Brian, what is a racial equity lens? Glad you asked. A racial equity lens, that's my attempt to be funny. So sorry, it's been a long day. But a racial equity lens, it's a metaphor that we use and we try to encourage people to think of it as a prism. And as you turn that prism, it shows you different colors. And so think of it as you turn the prism, you also see different lights that will shine on different issues around a specific bill. And so there are about 6 different lights of that prism that we like to focus in on. And I'll highlight those quickly as I wrap up the presentation. But we look at what are the experiences of each racial and ethnic population. We believe that each, even when you look at the intersections of race or ethnicity, what is their experiences, their specific experiences, their relationship to white supremacy, and then which racial and ethnic groups would be most affected by this policy decision, or in this case, this boundary adjustment that you all would propose. Does this policy decision or boundary address the lived experiences based on race or ethnicity? And if so, does the policy decision consider them differently? Is it grouping them all together? How do you account for these individual experiences? How do we account for the historical racial trauma that each group has experienced? And which of these historical legacies of white supremacy and racism are implicated in the decisions that we're making today? They're present, they're everywhere around us, as long as we tune in and pay attention to them. What does it mean to have racially equitable representation and engagement? So for example, as we think through the task force, who's represented at the table? Who's not? Why are they not? Who could have been included? What does it mean to rethink about what power looks like? Who is proactively invited? Whose lived experiences are being censored? These are all questions that, as we sit down and think about redistricting, that we would encourage you all to have at the forefront of your minds as you're thinking like now, today, in terms of process and in terms of the actual decisions that you make. What are the different forms of discrimination? And then I'll just breeze through these next 2 slides, but what do we think in terms of outputs and outcomes? How are we measuring and then monitoring the decisions that we make to ensure we are achieving the desired effects? And so, what could the outputs be for each affected racial and ethnic population? Might they be different across groups? If so, why? And so I can make sure that John has these slides and can share them with you. I'll also be happy to talk through any questions that you all may have. Here is our contact information. Our website is dcracialequity.org, or you can reach us at core@dccouncil.us. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Brian. That was a great presentation. Definitely a lot of information that I need to absorb as well in this process, for sure. If anyone has any questions, Jonathan, do they have any questions in the chat or that you may see?
No current questions in the chat, but feel free to take yourself off mute. And also for our viewers, there's a Q&A section. So if you would please feel free to jump in. That would be greatly appreciated.
Good evening. I do have a question. This is Anthony Hood. Brian, thank you for your presentation. Or should I say, Mr. McClure, thank you for your presentation. I will, just a quick question. How does the Council's Office on Racial Equity work with the Mayor's Office on Racial Equity? Is there a nexus, or do you all conversate with Dr. Hewitt and others? How does that work?
Yes, and Dr. Hewitt is a good friend of mine. We work closely together. We're actually in conversation to develop something a little more formal. But as she has been setting up the office, whether it's just been in advisory role, sharing learned lessons, because this work is not easy. One of the experiences I've been blessed to have is that I was able to work in writing the racial equity achieved results legislation that created this office, and had no clue I would ever end up in this role. But when I wrote the legislation, what I envisioned was having an office for council and having an office on the executive side. And this work will only be successful when those offices work together. And so whether it's the toolkits, if you go look at our websites right now, you will see that there are some things that are shared, and that's because we are in communication. I'll share one thing that I'm hoping to implement, and I'm hoping I'm not getting out ahead of her, but core focuses on the legislation as it's being crafted, and then as it's going through the votes. But then, we put out our analysis, but then it goes to the mayor to be implemented. We know that there's a gap there. And so one of the things that I would love to see in the future is additional analyses to see how the bills council passes as intended are being implemented on that side. And so I know Dr. Hewitt is also working through the RIA process. And so we're in conversations with them, thinking through methodologies as well.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Brian, I have a question for you as well. What is your role around the budgeting process for the council? Like, do you have input in terms of any of the line items in the budget? Obviously, we know that closing the racial wealth gap is something that's top of mind for a lot of us, and a lot of what we think about, knowing that finances and what the city contributes to specific communities is important. Does CORE have a role in that process at all?
Yeah, so that's a great question. According to the rules, CORE does not have a formal process in the budget, in council's budget formulation process. However, we do, and last year we did work with most members to provide some type of unofficial analysis and input and guidance. We also partnered with the MITRE Corporation. This was parallel to the budget in developing a racial wealth gap report. And I guess we're announcing it here. It will be released hopefully in the next few weeks. And so once that is released, I will share it with you all directly. But that really gets at, I think it's going to be a game changer. And I know there's not a lot more that I could say about it now. I probably said too much. But we are really excited about that work. The other thing, and I'll make sure I share this, I'm a terrible multitasker, but when I finished, we also created a budget oversight toolkit so that council members can have, be introduced to best practices around questions. So like last year, the basis was on, how do you push the executive to think about how do you disaggregate data by race? And so, there is a series of questions in this toolkit that provided members with questions to ask during oversight. And so that toolkit is available, and we were really excited about that work.
Okay, are there any more questions?
Shirley Smith, I have my hand up.
Okay.
I thank you for saying that the toolkit has not been completed, not released yet. But my concern is that we've been living with this for over 200 years. And this city has not, I probably is more progressive than a lot, but I don't see any progress towards, I live in a neighborhood that is completely changing. And believe me, the whites or the blacks are completely, they come from other places, not DC. They come from the South, they come from the North, the West, but they come with all their baggage. And I would like to see just what kind of toolkit we have that's available for white people as well as Black people to understand how we live together. So I'm interested in this, and I will wait and hope that we can present this at another time. But thank you.
You're welcome, Ms. Smith.
Commissioner Washington, we have a question from Commissioner Robert Branham. He asked, what is CORE's specific connection to ward redistricting at the ward level?
Yeah, and thank you for that question. I started to drop some of the toolkits as well as our RIA database in the chat. I hope I'm putting it in the right place. If I'm not, can someone else, whoever sees it, just share it in the right place?
I definitely will. You got it in the right spot, Brian, but I'll make sure that everyone gets an opportunity to have a copy of it.
Yeah, he'll take care of that.
Appreciate you all. And yeah, so as you all may know, we did do a full RIA for the first overall redistricting measure that went through maybe like a month or so ago. And that is on the RIA database link that I put out. Also, we will be doing a full RIA racial equity impact assessment for the ward level redistricting measure, resolution, or bill, whatever form it comes through council. We'll be reviewing that as well. And so part of this work or what I want to accomplish tonight is making the introduction between with you all in our office so that you all know that we are available to help you think through these things as well.
Are there any additional questions?
Brian, is there anything specific that you could add about the ANC process? Ward 5 was, really thankful to be able to have the racial equity impact assessment that you provided from your office at the citywide level. But as it comes down to the ward level, I know some of the things that we're going to be thinking about is around single member district, changes, population balances, effectiveness of ANC commissions, and if we need to increase specific numbers. Do you have any guidance on ways in which maybe we could think about racial equity through that lens?
Yeah, and I think I would really want Malika to weigh in on that. And I will also encourage, I see Nolan drop the link to the assessment that we did for the overall ward redistricting, but I would highlight there were 5 overall themes that we highlighted. And if you look on page 10 of that assessment, it will go into a little bit more detail. But it talked about what were the racial equity implications around resident participation, the impacts around voting power, what was happening with growth in the district. We believe that the changes that were being proposed would have a significant impact on resource allocation and how resources were allocated, and also spoke about the impacts on the delivery of government services as well. And so if Malika were here, she would go into more details about each of those, but I do encourage you, there is some level of specificity spelled out in the link that Nolan just provided.
Thanks, Brian. We will definitely invite Malika to come back and expound upon all that you've provided us today. I see Commissioner Sadell Moore has raised her hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so it's my understanding that the city has potentially been looking into appealing the census numbers based on approximately 2% undercount of our population was the last number that I saw in the news. And I'm wondering if there's been any kind of initial analysis based on the city's numbers for the racial impact of that undercount, or whether it was an undercount that was really seen, in wards like Ward 5. So I'm just kind of looking for a little bit of information, anything that you can share publicly in regards to potential undercount and the racial impact.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I don't have the answer to that. I'm aware of what you're asking, but I don't know off the top of my head. But my commitment is to check with my staff on that, and I'll circle back around with you to get you that answer, because I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions?
No more questions in the chat, and I don't have any other hands up right now. So
Okay.
There's nobody else.
Nobody else?
Washington, I turn it back over to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Brian, for coming out. Appreciate all the information that you've provided. And we all look forward to getting additional information from you that you can provide. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on our agenda next. Excuse me. We have Joy Phillips, who's from the Office of Planning. And Joy is a former co-worker of mine at the Department of Health during my tenure. And I know she can provide a lot of information. So she's going to be providing information on the tools and some training that's going to be provided for the redistricting process. Joy, where are you?
Okay, let me see if I can share my screen. I've never done share screen in Zoom. So let's see what's going on here. See. Okay, let me see if I can get to my full page. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can see it. I can see it.
Okay, yes. All right, great. All right. Okay, so thanks guys for inviting me. And I am Joy Phillips, the Associate Director of the Data Analysis and Visualization Unit at the DC Office of Planning. As I said, I'm really happy to be here to discuss with you the role of the Office of Planning in the 2022 ANC and SMD redistricting process. Right, first let me deal with the general role for the Office of Planning. Now, the Office of Planning general role in the redistricting process continues to be to assist the Executive Office of the Mayor by providing technical and analytical support to the Council's Subcommittee on Redistricting. Now that we are in what I term the phase 2 of the redistricting process, our role expands to providing technical and analytical support to the 8 ward task forces. Right, so let me get to the specific roles for the Office of Planning. So this first slide is on the data analysis and tools. Now, OP will analyze the 2020 Census redistricting data and prepare population and housing characteristics files by ANC and SMD, by census tract and census block geography. OP will make the ESRI redistricting tool available for ANC and SMD redistricting, and we will ensure that the templates will show each ward by census block, and that make sure that it's available on the redistricting tool so you can redraw those boundaries. Now let's look at the tool access and training. The Office of Planning will provide access to the ESRI redistricting tool for use in creating the final maps. And the tool can be accessed. I have the URL here for you guys to see where you can access the tool. And the procedures for accessing the tool will remain the same as in ward redistricting. You got to create an account and you got to log in, and then it takes you from there. So I know some folks have been trained before the ward redistricting. It will be a similar training, but some of the training will be directly related to ANC and SMD redistricting. So there are some differences. It's not the same. It's not 100% the same, but it's probably roughly about 90% the same. Okay, on the second bullet, the Office of Planning will host 2 training sessions on the use of the ESRI redistricting tool. And these training sessions will be for council representatives, task force leadership, and selected task force members. The first of this training will be tomorrow, actually Wednesday, from 2 to 4 p.m. And the names that have been sent to us in terms of participation, we have sent the invite to them, so everyone should be ready for tomorrow. The second set of training will be next week, Monday the 31st, and that one will be from 6 to 8 p.m. Again, we will send the invite out to the folks that have been selected to participate in that training. Okay, so this next slide tells you that the Office of Planning will create electronic and hard copy maps and data tables for the task force to use. The maps and tables will also be available on OP's webpage, and the link is here. And those, you can download those. All the task force members can download those hard copy maps and data. However, we have already provided the electronic copies of those maps and data tables to the council representatives and to some of the task force chairs that we had information on. But those of you who did not receive those, just contact me and I can send them out again. But if you go to this link, you'll be able to find those. In terms of the electronic maps, the Office of Planning has provided 4 copies of wall-size maps to the entire ward, of the entire ward to each task force. So we have 2 copies of those maps, which will show the boundaries of the ANCs and SMDs, and 2 copies will not show that. I'll get to that later on in some slides close to the end, and you will see why there's a difference. But these maps will show the census block identifier and the numbers of persons in each of those census blocks, together with population estimates, and as I said, existing ANC and SMDs or boundaries or not. Okay. Now let's go to the census block splitting. And please pay special attention to this slide. Now, while it is for each task force to decide whether it is necessary to split a census block, this is typically unnecessary and should be avoided if possible. Splitting census blocks increases the amount of time that's necessary to process each proposal or each set of maps that you send to us. So try as much as possible not to do that. However, if a task force wishes to split a census block, it will need to work with the Office of Planning to obtain an estimate of the number of persons living in each portion of that census block and allow additional lead time at each stage of the redistricting process. So it takes a lot of time because we have to use other sources of data and decide how to split those persons in those blocks from one side to the other to make sure it makes sense. So it's a lot of work. Working relations. Now, the chair or assigned point of contact of each task force must work with the Office of Planning to validate that the word description and boundaries as intended are consistent before you submit your report to council. The Office of Planning will assist in clarifying the proposed boundary text as much as time and resources allow. So the point here is that it would be a challenge for us to work with every member of the task force that calls us with one question or another. So we are asking for you to channel your questions to the chair or chairs, because some task force has more than one chair, or assigned point of contact.
What happened? Joy,
Sir,
what happened?
didn't seem like she was like right at the end. I put a link in the chat to the link that she had put up there for all the ANC and SMD data and maps and stuff. I think some of that is what we sent out in emails, or Jonathan sent out an email as well.
Okay. I don't know what happened, Jonathan. We don't know what happened.
I'm gonna give her a call on the phone. I don't know if it was technical difficulties, but we can transition Nolan maybe to your section.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't have a ton. So
okay, until we can find out what's going on with Joy. Yes.
Yeah, let me just.
Okay.
So should I go for it?
Yes, go ahead, Nolan.
Yeah, so the chairs, we met in last week and talked about how to, sort of engage the public and make sure that there's beyond the committee input from the broader public. And so we're going to be holding a public meeting on Tuesday, February 8th. So our next regular redistricting committee meeting will be a public meeting, sort of in the form of a hearing to allow folks to sign up and provide their feedback. We've also put up a Google form so people can submit that way, and they don't have to necessarily attend. The deadline for that Google form is February 22nd. So they'll have some time after the 8th. And we're hopeful that, this will give us some direction as a group, or at least be able to suss out some of the things that folks are really concerned about, or issue areas that we pay special attention to. So there'll be more. Well, Jonathan and I, Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, he might be on the phone, but we'll be working together to get the information out for the meeting on the 8th. It will be virtual, and folks are welcome to attend and speak, committee members or the public. But that will be the crux of the meeting on the 8th. And then we'll sort of try and get down to more brass tacks on the regular redistricting following February 22nd. So with that,
Okay.
that's pretty much what I had. Is Joy, you back?
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect timing.
Okay,
Yes.
so let me try to rejoin. I'm not sure let me try to share my screen again. Okay. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so let's see. So where did I cut off slide? Let me see here. So did you see the slide?
Joy, I believe you were talking about splitting census blocks.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
About that. Yes.
Okay, let's see. All right, so I guess it's this one. Let me go to. Okay. Can you see the screen properly? Can you see the full thing here? I think it gets cut off when I go into the full screen, so I don't know if I'm still linked to you.
Okay, we can see it.
Can I continue? Okay, so let me do this and let me see if I can know if something happens. So let me go back to splitting census blocks. So what I was saying here is that while it is for each task force to decide whether it is necessary to split a census block, this typically is not necessary and it should be avoided if possible. Splitting census block, it increases the amount of time necessary to process each proposal. However, if a task force wishes to split a census block, it will need to work with the Office of Planning to obtain an estimate of the number of persons living in each portion of that census block and allow additional lead time at each stage of the redistricting process. Okay, so let's see now if it's okay when I go to the next slide. Okay, I think I'm still with you.
Yes.
Okay, working relations. The chair or assigned point of contact of each task force must work with the Office of Planning to validate that the word description and the boundaries as intended are consistent before submitting to the council. The Office of Planning will assist in clarifying proposed boundary text as much as time and resources allow. The point here is that it would be challenging for the Office of Planning to work with all members of the task force. So we are asking for you to channel your questions to the chair of the task force, or in some cases, there's more than one chair, or if there's an assigned point of contact with the Office of Planning. So, so please help us along with that. All right, let's see here. Okay, boundary clarification and availability. Now, the Office of Planning has no role whatsoever in recommending where boundaries should be, but will advise the council on whether the language recommended by the task force describe the boundaries clearly. The Office of Planning will also confirm the number of persons in each area based on how you have selected those census blocks. The next bullet is saying that we will respond to task force questions as promptly as possible, given available resources. But due to the volume of meetings of each task force group and subgroups, we will not be able to participate in more than 1 or 2 meetings of each task force throughout the process. Okay, so this section is basically showing you the tables that we have created thus far. We have created 6 tables, 3 ANC data tables and 3 SMD data tables. And we have shared those tables with the council reps, and we have shared them with some of the ward task force representatives. So if you did not receive these tables, then please send me an email and I can send these tables to you. However, in one of the slides that I presented earlier, the link to these tables is in there. So anyone can access those tables from the link that I've put in one of the earlier slides. But let me explain what these tables show. So again, for these next 6 slides, what I will show you will just be a segment of the table. It's not the full table. So this slide is showing you table 1, and it is the Census 2020 population, housing units, and group quarter population by 2013 ANC boundaries. The first column is going to show you the ANC identifier. Then it's going to be total population, the population by race. And as you continue to the right, it's a pretty long table. It will show you the 18 and over population. Again, it will be by the race categories. Then it goes into the group quarters, and then it shows the housing units. So it's a pretty big table, but it can assist you in doing your redistricting, redrawing those boundaries. The second table, again, it will be a table with ANCs and all that. However, this one is in more detail. It will show you the census tract and the census block corresponding to each of those ANCs. And then on column 4, it will tell you if there was a split census block in your existing ANC boundary. If there's a split, there will be an asterisk indicating where that split was. If there was no split, then it remains blank. I'll show you when I get to the SMD table as to how those splits relate to each other. Table 3, in terms of the SMD, the ANC data table, it shows you each of those ANCs, their 2010 population count, their 2020 population count, and then the change from 2010 to 2020 in terms of the numeric change and the percent change. Right, then it sort of repeats for the SMD, the same scenario. The column 1 will have the SMD identifier, followed by the population number. It will give you housing unit, it will give you group quarters, and so on, all the way to more columns to the right that I could not put in this slide. Then table 5, again, it will show the census tract and census block corresponding to each of those SMDs. And this is an example where the SMD had a split census tract. For instance, you can see the census block, 1001 appears twice in census tract 3902. However, when you look at the first column, you will see that part of that census block was in SMD 1C04, and the other part was in 1C05. Sure, I can see that. Right. So again, if you don't want to do that this time around, if there are splits in Ward 5, then look at where those asterisks occur and try to correct those splits if you have them now. Again, that's if you can work without splitting the census blocks. And we hope that you can do that. Table 6, again, these are the SMDs, and it shows you what the 2010 population was, the 2020 population, and then the numeric and the percent change. And then I get to the ward maps with ANC SMD boundaries. So we are providing the maps for you, the hard copy maps for you to work on, or the electronic copies for you to work on in 2 versions. One version as the one as rather the snapshot of the one that is shown here will show that the existing ANC and SMD boundaries. So the blue lines here will be those SMD boundaries. The more orange lines will be the ANC boundaries. And then the gray lines, as you can see on the far left, that will be the ward boundaries. So it will, this snapshot is basically for those that want to build from the existing boundaries. So you have a chance to look at where the boundaries are, and then you can modify them. Then if we move to the next slide, which is the snapshot without those ANC and SMD boundaries, you might decide that you want to start with a clean slate, you want to start from scratch, and you want to create those SMDs and ANCs just by looking at the census block and those population numbers. So if we zoom into each of these blocks, which you see the dashed lines, the first line of the census block shows you the census tract and that block identifier. The second row of that census block shows you the the population number of that census block. So we try to make it as easy as possible for you to do your redrawing of the boundaries. Okay. So I think that's about it. And I think I'm still here, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let me see if I can get out of this and answer some of your questions. So thanks, guys. And this is my contact information. So let's see if I can get out. So stop sharing.
Thank you. You are out.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Joy, very much. Are there any questions? I mean, she's given us a lot of information. Jonathan, I do see one person's hand up. I don't know if you have any in your chat, but I see Commissioner Moore's hand is raised. Jonathan,
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'll just go ahead and ask. I want to say, first of all, thank you for the updates to the ESRI tool. It's fascinating and very useful.
Great.
The second thing I wanted to bring up is maybe just a small suggestion about the tool. Because I think what has happened for us and probably for a lot of wards is that, so when I look at the ANC SMD map, I think it's very useful that I obviously can see the current SMD boundaries, but I know we've had slight changes around the border of the ward. And so it would be useful if on the same map and not two separate maps, because I know they both exist, if we saw the ward boundaries as an overlay as well on the ANC SMD map. And if it's there, maybe I'm just not seeing it right now. I hope that's a clear suggestion.
So Ms. Moore, are you saying that you are not seeing the ward boundaries on the map at this point?
Right, not the updated ones, because there were small changes at the ward level in terms of redistricting, where there would be slight mismatches on the edge of the ward boundaries from what is in the ANC SMD map.
Okay, I'll forward this to the person who's going to conduct the training.
Okay.
He's our GIS expert, so he might be able to assist you in your question on this. But you can still shoot me an email, and so I have make sure I understand the question properly so that he can respond to you directly. So that will be great if you can do that.
Okay, and should I just forward that through the chair to you all?
Yes.
Okay, I'll do that.
But this is important, and he's doing a training tomorrow. So if he can fix it before that time, then that would be great. So
well, I'll send it tonight.
All right. So you can shoot it to me directly for this one time.
Okay, I will.
All right, thanks.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Moore. We have another question. Is that Jeffrey Hatchard?
Yes, thanks. Ms. Phillips, I was wondering, I'm not able to attend either of the training sessions, and I did go to the training for the tool before. And since you said there's only a few differences, would it be possible to get like a tip sheet that just lays out what those are?
Okay, so in terms of the manual is online, the the reference guide is online. There is a video tutorial right now, but we will replace it with the updated information that pertains directly to the ANC and SMDs. So that might be your best source of getting the piece that's new and different.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there anyone else that has a question? I don't see anybody else's hand up. I don't see any. Jonathan, are there any questions in the chat?
No questions in the chat.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I
guess we can move on, huh?
I'm actively checking Facebook as well.
All right, thank you guys.
Joy, thank you so much for coming. It's a lot of information to take in. I'm sure it's going to be fun
Please
working.
share.
Yeah,
please share the PowerPoint with everyone.
Okay, Jonathan, you can get that to Jonathan. That would be great. And we can do that. Yes. But thank you so much. I look forward to working with you, and I'm sure the rest of the task force does as well. I'm going to make sure I get in that training so that I can learn how to use those maps, those tools, the way they should be. Yes, definitely. Okay, thank you. Okay, I guess with that, since Nolan has already done his presentation, that brings us to the close of our meeting. Unless any one of my task force members has anything to add or say. Co-chairs. Okay. Well, I thank everyone for participating in our meeting tonight. We received a wealth of information from the Office on Racial Equity and from the Office of Planning, and we all look forward to working together in redistricting our great ward. Thank you so much for coming tonight. That's it.
Have a good one.
Have a good one. Hi, Miss. Hi,